We're Malin and Johan, a Swedish couple that have been sailing full-time since 2016. After 3.5 years of sailing, we welcomed our daughter Vera on board. Our latest adventure is to build our Dreamboat, a 50-foot sailboat that we're building ourselves on our farm. Welcome aboard and please subscribe for weekly episodes.
So yesterday evening I got 4 more planks onto the hull on this side, on the port side. And this morning I glued up 9 more pieces that are now ready to go onto the hull. And I'm hoping maybe I can't do all of them tonight. It's already pretty late, but maybe half of them. We're getting really close to closing off the bow of the boat to get the fully planked radius up there. It will be really interesting to see how we're getting over that tight radius that we have on top up front. That will be telling on how the rest of the planking will go up front. And there's only around 12 pieces, I think, that we need to put in place to get the whole bow planked in. So I'm hoping I can do that in the coming days. Yesterday evening when I planked the hull, I used this construction platform, I think it's called in English. And since it has wheels, it's pretty easily to move it along the hull. And that speeds things up quite a lot. And this is high enough, so I'm thinking this will be good enough for the rest of the planking actually. And then we'll see what we're doing when it's time for the fiberglass. Another reason why I haven't put in scaffolding yet is because I want to have full access to the hull, because we're going to sand and fair the hull before we put on the fiberglass. And if we have all that scaffolding in place now, that will be sort of in the way when it's time for that. So I'm thinking if we can do with this for the planking, then we could more easily sand the hull and fair it before the first layers of fiberglass. And then maybe we build something when it's time for that. So it's another day here in the barn. The Swedish summer is back, the real Swedish summer. Rain and high winds, some squalls passing by with some much needed rain, so I guess that's good. Yesterday evening I worked until 11 o'clock roughly, but I only managed to install 1 more strip. But then I just got too tired, so I said to myself it's better to just go and get some sleep and continue today fresh. So today I will just continue with the planking, but I will also try to answer some of the questions that we've been getting in the past few videos in the comment section. Some of the questions are really nerdy ones about this really specific stuff about the boat build, and some are more general about our future plans and stuff like that. Yeah, one question that we've been getting a lot the last couple of weeks is why we're not using steam or steam box for the strips up here that has a lot of twist in them. And the reason is that we're using epoxy glue, and epoxy doesn't go very well together with wood that it has a high moisture level. You could of course dry mount the steamed plank, let it sit until the moisture has evaporated and then apply the glue, but then it will take too much time. And it's not really necessary. Maybe I gave that impression in the last week's episode that we have a lot of twist in some of these pieces, but it's by no means impossible to get it in place. It's just that it takes a bit longer. I need to apply more clamps, and yeah, it just takes a bit longer for those that have a lot of twist in them. And we have a lot of strips that we need to mount, and since these strips are 28 millimeters thick, that means that they would have to sit in the steam box for roughly 1 hour, so that would also add a lot of time to the whole build. Yeah, and while we're talking about the strips we're using, a quite common question that we've been getting is why we're not putting a bevel on the sides of the strips to make up for the curvature of the hull. And the reason is more or less the same to why we're not using a steam box. It would take too much time, and it's not really necessary for this type of build. I definitely understand why you'll do it on a smaller boat where you want to have the wood visible, because you will get gaps like this, especially here at the turn of the bilge by having straight edges like we have, or 90 degrees. But in this case, since we're going to have fiberglass on top of this, the wood won't be visible later on. So what we will do is that we will fill these gaps with thickened epoxy and then sand the whole hull before we put the fiberglass on top. And the epoxy in itself is actually stronger than the wood, so it doesn't matter that we have these gaps really on the hull. But of course, if you want to have the wood visible, that's another case. But since we're not having that, we save a lot of time by not putting a bevel on the strips. It adds a little weight since there will be more epoxy in the whole build, but considering the size of this boat and the type of sailing we will be doing, that small weight penalty of the extra epoxy in those gaps is really, really small. So it's time to start with another strip. Feels really cool now that we're at the turn of the bilge at the whole length of the boat now. It also starts to turn inward even in the bow of the boat now. And that actually makes it a little bit easier to mount the strips now, because there's not so much flex in it anymore, and the gap on the outside is actually closing in a little bit now. And while I'm standing here looking at the hull, another question that we've been getting is, are you going to remove all these washers and screws before you put the fiberglass on? And yes, we are, since these are just screwed into the temporary frames that are there to get us the shape of the hull. So there's going to be a lot of unscrewing screws later on and get these washers off. I don't know exactly how many there are, but yeah, there's 22 temporary frames and around 150 strips. So yeah, you do the math. There's a lot of them.
While Jon is out in the barn working on the boat, I usually sit in here at my desk and editing the videos and doing some admin work. And another question that we got, which we thought was interesting, was when you mentioned that you two do it all without a production team, it made me wonder what your schedule is like. Do you film on certain days and edit on a certain day, or do you edit as you go? What programs do you use? Yeah, so it's Johan and I who produce and film and edit all these videos. So usually our weeks looks like this, that on Monday, Tuesday, I can be more of a help out on the build. And then like Wednesday, Thursday, a little bit on Friday, I spend more time here on the computer and editing. And, you know, fly. And the editing process looks like this, that I first make like a rough cut of the footage that I want to use, put that down on a timeline. And as I'm scrolling through all the footage that we have, I think of the same time what type of storyline, how we're gonna place the footage. And after the rough cut, I do the fine cut, and that usually takes then away maybe half of the footage. So if we have a video that is around 20 minutes, a finished video, the rough cut is usually 40 minutes of footage. So I go through and cut and remove pieces, and also then create the whole storyline of that video. And then it's time to find music and write and record the voiceovers. So I write a script of what I'm gonna read in as a voiceover, because it's very, very difficult to just be spontaneous, especially with the language being English. So I make a script, I record that, and then do all those tweaks with the voiceovers and music. And when that is done, Johan, he looks through the video and says what he thinks about it. And then if he has any feedback, I will do that. And then I look through the video once or twice and make, you know, some small changes, volumes, or make a clip longer or shorter, stuff like that. And then it's time to render the video and upload it on YouTube and make, you know, YouTube, Patreon, and Facebook posts. Create a thumbnail, which is the little photo you see of the video on YouTube. And then I also make like a trailer of that video that we post on Instagram. So even if the video is finished, there is still a few hours of work to upload it and do all of those things around that. And I usually finish with that on the same day as the video goes live. So yeah, it's a little stressful sometimes. So the way that we're filming now compared to how we filmed when we were full-time sailing is quite different, because now we're in one place all the time, we're on land, we have way better internet connection. Even if we can't have like fiber here, we have to use a Starlink to get proper internet out here on the countryside. But that makes it much easier when I'm editing and the uploading process. But when we were cruising, it was easier in a way to film and get footage, because we were, you know, seeing new stuff all the time, coming to new places. So we were really filming as we go. Of course, we had a little plan of what we want to film, what could be interesting to show, and then, you know, the things that just happened in the daily life on the boat. And now we're also filming as we go, since we're filming the whole boat building process. But it's a little different then, because we're in the same place and we can think a little bit more of what do we want to show in this video. We can focus on this and create content in a slight different way. And the programs that we use for editing is Final Cut Pro 10 that we've used almost since the beginning, and I'm really happy with that. And the way that we are filming, if we have cameras in a certain position out in the barn, we use like a high tripod that we can put the big camera on, and put that in different places. And then we have GoPros with clamps. So yeah, that was a little bit about our filming and editing process. And I still think it's really fun to produce videos and film and edit videos. It's a fun way of being creative. And it's like laying a puzzle when you put together a video, which is kind of cool, and you get better and better all the time. So now I'm gonna finish my voiceovers and let's go back out to the barn.
Another thing that we get asked quite often is how much fiberglass are we going to add on top of the cedar on the outside and on the inside? And is that fiberglass going to be part of the strength of the hull, or is it only to protect the wood or the timber? And yes, the fiberglass in this build is definitely going to be a big part of the strength of the hull. And we're going to add quite a lot of fiberglass, especially on the outside, since we want to have a good abrasion resistance and puncture resistance also, since we're going to cruise with this hull. We're going to use roughly 2.5 kilos of dry glass on the outside, so that's the weight of the glass without the epoxy, and roughly 2 kilos on the inside per square meter, that is. And then, of course, we have the epoxy, the cedar, and then also we have the screws that are connecting the strips here. So that means that the whole hull, including the transom but without the deck, will weigh roughly 1,750 kilos. And that's including the glue, the epoxy glue, the cedar, all the screws between these strips, the fiberglass on the outside with the epoxy, and the same on the inside. And I'm confident that this will produce a really stiff and strong hull, and fairly light for the amount of strength and stiffness it will have. Another possibility that we have thought about is adding a layer or two with carbon fiber, and we still haven't taken that off the table. Depends on what type of price we can get on carbon fiber. The biggest benefit for us in using carbon is how carbon fiber is affected by fatigue, bending, cycling. It's pretty similar to the cedar actually, versus fiberglass, which drops off pretty quickly in strength when you cycle it. Cedar reaches a plateau that is pretty similar to carbon, so those two together would be a really nice mix. But of course, carbon fiber isn't cheap, so we'll see what we can find. So that's it for tonight. It's been a really productive day. I have reached the top in the bow section now with the planking. But it's well past midnight now, so it's really time to go to bed. The next step will be to continue on the other side to reach the same level again. And after that we still have around 350 meters of planking that we can glue up to longer strips. But before I go to bed, I thought I should answer one last question for today, and that's what's our future plans with this boat? And as you all know, this will take some time before this boat is in the water, but even so, both me and Malin has a dream of returning to Alaska. And there's different routes you can take to get to Alaska from Sweden. And one of them is the Northwest Passage, and that's something we both really want to do. But Northwest Passage is the Northwest Passage, and you know, we just have to see how the conditions is when this boat is ready, if it's possible to go there with the ice. It's really up and down. One summer it's possible, the next it can be totally impossible. So we'll just have to see. I have nothing against going the normal route through Panama, like we did it last time. But the Northwest Passage would have been really cool, and get back to Alaska and then maybe sail south from there and go around the whole Americas. So down to Cape Horn, Patagonia, and maybe to South Georgia Island again. I've been there before, and that's one place that I really dream of returning to. It's such a cool place. But we'll see. Like I said, it's quite some time before we're sailing anywhere with this boat, so yeah, lots of things can happen before that. So that's it for this video. I hope you got some answers, and that you enjoyed watching me put some more planks on round 3. So see you next week. Bye bye.